As the countdown to Wastelanders continues to get shorter, Bethesda seems to be on quite a roll sharing additional news or even gameplay of Wastelanders. We saw just a few weeks ago what they labeled as Trailer 1, seeming to indicate that subsequent trailers are on the way. So I wouldn't be shocked if next week or even the week after we see something like Trailer 2. But today, and in this video, what we're doing is giving a bit of a recap of some of the more recent news. Bethesda just released the entire raw gameplay of the gameplay that was shown at Pax East. For starters, this is just way higher quality, so you can see a lot more of the details, but even further, it doesn't have the developer commentary over top, so you can actually hear a lot of sound effects and voice acting that you couldn't previously, which has revealed several very interesting characters that seem to be making a return. In this video, I'm going to do a bit of a breakdown on that. But even further, they also go over some other general details around Wastelanders, sharing some common community questions and answers to them. But also, it seems like as of late, there actually was a fairly large departure from Bethesda, with one of the higher ups of the company leaving. But also some other weird or interesting things going on that I think are worth pointing out, as well as actually a fairly large new exploit that could be on the way. So in this video, we're going to go over just about all of that. If you guys do want to keep up to date with Fallout 76 or some Fallout 76 news, you can leave a like or subscribe. I should actually have an interesting or different video coming tomorrow on the game. And actually also, just as I was recording this video, additional PTS invites went out. So if you're on PC, you could actually check the Fallout 76 launcher to see if you have that new download or even just your email associated with your account. And no, unfortunately, I wasn't added. I don't think I'm ever going to actually get added to the PTS. But hey, I was pretty lucky to get to play 30 minutes at Pax East, so I can't really complain. But first, taking a look at this Inside the Vault article, the vast majority of it is just a recap of the Wastelanders panel. It more or less transcribes what we heard or saw during that panel into text form. So if you didn't like my video, that was a kind of summarized version of it, or if you didn't want to watch the full 30-minute panel in general, here's now a text alternative that does kind of cut to the chase and give you some of the major details. But also in this, we get the developer Q&A, which was this weird thing that was absent from the panel. That in the sense that Bethesda described that they would actually be doing this during the panel and in fact asked people to leave questions for them, but of course we never saw it, not until this Inside the Vault. But they kind of describe how they wove some of those questions into the panel naturally, not just having a separate Q&A section. Something pretty cool, one of the first questions is around launching nukes in Wastelanders, where it is described that you still can launch nukes and even at the two major bases of the Raiders and Settlers. And in fact, that the humans at those locations will have their own hazmat suits that they'll go into. That's pretty cool, just a nice little attention to detail to see added. I know I for one have been really hoping that we see another kind of endgame nuke boss similar to the Scorchbeast Queen, and Wastelanders seems like the biggest opportunity thus far to actually implement that. We also hear more about the effects that the Wastelanders update will have on the base storyline in Fallout 76. Some of that original story content is described as being interwoven into Wastelanders. You can see this in some of the dialogue options even in this gameplay, asking about the Vault 76 Overseer if she's been seen recently. And all of the base game content will still be available after Wastelanders, although even further they do describe how some of what was accomplished in the base game story will have a role to play in the new Wastelanders story, which is pretty interesting. I'm definitely going to have a recap video because I feel like Fallout 76 is this weird game where a lot of people have just never played the story. Even some hardcore fans that play the game daily haven't finished all of the main game quests because of the way it was laid out, and you can kind of do what you want when you want to. There's a question around whether or not Wastelanders will have a team play option. And here they actually reveal an interesting feature, how your teammates will have the option to listen in when you're having a conversation with NPCs during quests. I have been kind of wondering how this will work. Likely you'll have to turn in your quests individually, like if you're playing with 4 others, even though the interior will look the same. We saw that with that little prompt that was shown during the gameplay. If one person talks to the NPC and turns in their quest, I don't think it'll update for everyone. I imagine everyone will have to talk to the NPC so they don't actually miss out on some of that content. But I guess maybe as an alternative, if you're just playing with your friend, you could listen to them as they progress. One of the big speculations or questions was around balance changes coming with Wastelanders. Here they repeat how they're doing kind of a large rebalance later down the line after the update goes live, but seemingly with Wastelanders itself, there won't be major balance changes. So all those concerns around the meta shifting seem to be unfounded, which I think will have this interesting effect when the update goes live. You're going to have a lot of people who have been playing the game for a while that are in top tier kitted out armor. and then you're going to mix them with a bunch of new players that will probably get very frustrated very quickly as they try and do some of those boss events or even events in general, and those high tier players just one-shot everything. This is a problem I see already doing some events where people just insta-kill enemies, not allowing me to attack them, and in turn not allowing me to get loot. Thus far, Bethesda hasn't really had a concrete solution to this. They've discussed having a change to the event system so participation matters. But I imagine once you have this influx of new players, there's going to be a lot of frustration developing from that. There's a question about combating exploits and improving security. They describe how earlier this year they improved the tech behind the game, so now they could actually do hotfixes without having the game go offline for maintenance, which, speaking of, we actually got one of those today. It seems like this may have done a couple of things. Actually fix one of the third-party based dupe methods, so only on PC using third-party software, but also it looks like it actually re-enabled these vending machines and in turn actually re-enabled one of the old exploits that was available around the legendary purveyor. So now either this is just a mishap from Bethesda or a mistake, or what hopefully is a bit more likely, they may be actually using this as a bait to ban people who abuse it. As of late, there's been quite a bit of activity around bans with this game, and specifically yesterday, several people found bans for abusing a specific exploit. Although, on the topic of exploits, it looks like there might be more to come, as the person to release many of the most prolific exploits for this game, the inventory steal hack spawning in NPCs, as well as legendary items and other props, just teased a video of a new hack that will seemingly allow you to spawn in any item in the game. Now in this video, it doesn't show any legendary items, which is notable, but most other items are shown here, including some specific rare ones. And I would say the major concern whenever something like this comes out is Bethesda has simply not rectified those past exploits. When people are spawning in 3-star legendaries, they were never removed. Some of those accounts were banned, and 4 and 5-star legendaries were removed, but those 3 stars are still just out there. It's a permanent effect on the in-game economy. So even if Bethesda is super quick to patch this out, that doesn't necessarily mean it won't still have a permanent and drastic effect on the in-game economy like many of the past ones have. It'll be interesting to see what happens over the next week or so. Several people are actually specifically requesting this doesn't get released until after Wastelanders, as of course at that point it would kind of cause maximum damage. So that was a bit of a tangent off of the Q&A, although one final question on the Q&A was actually around plans for after Wastelanders launches. They don't reveal anything new. Right now they just mentioned focusing on Wastelanders, but they do mention how they'll have more details to share on the rest of 2020 for Fallout 76 in the near future. So it does keep me hopeful that maybe even before E3, we will hear more about this game and what the next DLCs will bring. But the final thing I wanted to look at and go over in this video is actually that new gameplay that was just released. It's technically an unlisted video if you're checking Bethesda's channel, but I will have a link down below. So one of the first things I think you should just hear is the voice acting.
Oh, now that you mention it, I guess I could spare these. Here.
Now that you mention it, I could use an extra pair of hands. See? That boy we put down? He's not the first of his crew to roll in here.
Glad to hear Vault-Tec actually took care of some of their people. You hear these rumors, right, about them just throwing folks to the wolves. Here's some rations and a fancy suit. Good luck. Well, don't you worry that smooth little face of yours. You are in good company now. 'Cause around here, we look after one another.
I thought the voice acting in this was actually pretty good. It was on par with Fallout 4, basically what I would hope for. It's not bad, it's not great, although this line is interesting.
And he said that inside that vault is that's where the big one is. Our last chance to turn our lousy luck around.
As I mentioned in my first impressions after playing about a half hour of this, even right off the bat, the treasure of Appalachia, which is likely in Vault 79 based on this promo image, is seemingly going to be a major theme or motivation throughout this entire DLC main quest. One of the things I wanted to do with this gameplay was actually give you comparisons to Fallout 76 right now versus this gameplay. One, so you could just see how much is actually transformed or evolved, but two, to actually show off the lighting changes that are coming with Wastelanders. This is kind of a lesser known part in some way. Bethesda mentioned it during their panel, I noticed it during my gameplay, and I think it definitely shows up here. The gameplay looks better. They explicitly described actually overhauling the reflections as well as contrast. It's not like it's a totally new game, but it definitely is a notable improvement. Something interesting that stood out to me right here was when you enter Foundation, it's quite clearly not an interior. I kind of expected Bethesda to treat these locations as basically Skyrim cities. So you'd have a little door that you'd have to go into loading the new city cell. The reason being, due to the instancing tech, you're only seemingly allowed to really take down enemies completely if they're in an interior, otherwise it would remove it for everyone on that server, and of course that can't happen. So based off this gameplay, or at least how it's showcased here, it looks like this exterior portion of Foundation, the non-underground part, will largely be protected. Like, you could probably attack these NPCs and they'll probably fight back, but at least based on my understanding of the mechanics right now, I don't imagine you'll be able to permanently kill them, but rather you will be able to do that once you enter into the underground portion, which also is available. So this part is super interesting, and I feel like not too many people will pick up on this. Now maybe it's just me, but that voice, and I'll play it a few times here.
This place is a godsend. It's terrible north of here. Just a poison blood. This place is a godsend. It's terrible north of here. Just a poison blood. This place is a godsend. It's terrible north of here. Just a poison blood.
So that sounds like Nora, or specifically Nora from Fallout 4's voice actor that was Courtney Taylor. Here's a few comparisons of just Nora voice lines versus this one.
This wasn't easy to find. What's this project that needs our attention?
This place is a godsend. It's terrible north of here. Just a poison blood.
What kind of potent weapon was Dr. Lee working on?
This place is a godsend. It's terrible north of here.
This is notable because there was actually a ton of speculation around this tweet. This is from May of last year, where she was at Bethesda Game Studios, Maryland, doing something, which a lot of people are speculating was actually Starfield, but I think this could act as some kind of evidence that in fact she was doing voice acting for Vault 76's Wastelanders DLC. Now it's hard to get a crisp piece of that audio, there's a lot of background noise, but it's interesting. I'd love to hear your guys' opinions on this in the comments down below. Here we can actually see how there's going to be different kinds of settlers. You have just a regular one, then also a settler forager. Earlier on, we saw a settler guard, which something pretty cool about them. The guard actually had his gun drawn, which if you played other Fallout games, you'll know is not always there. Sometimes the NPCs just walk around gunless, especially inside settlements like this. This will seemingly be a new to Vault 76 armor, specifically the armored railroad coat, which is something that you currently can't get in game, but of course will likely largely be just a port from Fallout 4. Something pretty interesting I picked up on here is it looks like we'll actually have several bows in Wastelanders. In the original Wastelanders trailer / gameplay, we saw this bow. Of course, this time we see a compound bow, and based on rumors, it seems like there may actually be several variants of bows, each having different stats associated with them, which funny enough is exactly how the bow mod for Fallout 4 works, so kind of cool to see that carried over. Although something else I noticed from this bow seems to suck. It is doing next to no damage despite having explosive arrows, which you would assume would be one of the higher tier ones. And also during this, we actually get a better look at some of these new weapons that are on the way, just higher fidelity so you can see more of that detail. But also you get a pretty good idea of the sounds they're going to make, which in particular for the plasma caster sounds great. I don't know if I'm maybe just reading too deeply into this, but during this segment, some of the NPCs actually run to kind of catch up to the next point, which hopefully this just becomes a main feature. Some of the older Bethesda games were so frustrating with those slow walking NPCs you had to follow. But overall, these are some of the major things I picked up on or other people pointed out to me from this new gameplay. I'll have the full link to the raw gameplay down below if you just want to watch it in its form. Although one last thing I just wanted to talk about that I've been kind of thinking about that is, I guess, somewhat concerning to come out of Pax East, but really just something curious is what's going on with Wastelanders and what's going on with Vault 76 / Bethesda / Wastelanders. A while ago, we heard that Wastelanders would be coming out in fall of 2019. And specifically at QuakeCon, they mentioned how along with Wastelanders, we would actually be getting several other things. The legendary player system, a rebalance of the game overall, now kind of being described as a one wasteland rebalance, and just a lot of those other miscellaneous features that apparently would be coming that fall along with this big update. But then a couple of things happened. Wastelanders saw 2 delays, first to Q1 of 2020 and then kind of a fake delay to the first week of Q2 of 2020. But also from this Pax East panel, we've learned that all of those other things, the legendary player system, the rebalance of the game, are actually getting pushed back, as well as other things we just haven't heard about in ages, like Vault 96, wherever that ends up being. Now, I'm not saying that the alarm bell should be ringing, but what happened? How did we go from summer of last year, Bethesda had certain expectations for all of this to release in fall, to now we're looking at an April initial release and then subsequent updates over the coming months or maybe even longer? And something else to go along with this, it seems like the development director at Bethesda Game Studios Austin actually just left last month. This was Chris Meyer. You actually saw him on basically all of the Fallout 76 panels or announcements. I was watching 2019's PAX East and I was like, oh yeah, what happened to that guy? We haven't heard from him in a while and he definitely wasn't at this year's PAX East. And then checking his LinkedIn, it seems like he's moved on. Now, could this just be him leaving? Could it be jumping off the ship before Wastelanders releases and bad stuff happens? Or maybe he was fired, they were trying to do reforms internally. Honestly, with all this information, I don't know what to make of it. I'm not trying to immediately say that this game is in store for more problems. It's just stuff I've been thinking about. A few things I've observed that have me somewhat concerned or just curious, like what's going on? What happened with this? This is another one that I would really love to hear from you guys in the comments down below. Do you think any of this is genuine cause for concern, or is it something as simple as he put in his time on the game, he feels like he did a good job with this update and he wants to move on to something else? Specifically, it looks like he actually got into a military contractor, so it's a totally different industry. And maybe Bethesda is actually not releasing some of that other content more so because they're trying to spread out content. Release the big update and then over the next couple of months to keep players interested, release some of those smaller updates. Maybe most of it's already done, they're just looking to keep players interested after we had such a long content drought. Either way, as always, again, I thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. But with that, I hope to see you all next time. Later.